morning, everybody. Today's date is February the 22nd, 2024. The time right now is 5:31. We're going to begin the meeting with the Charter Revision Commission. Before we get started, I would ask everyone if they could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's go ahead, this is the call for order. Let's go ahead and have a roll call. Would you be able to assist us with that, Mr.
Yes,
Valdez?
sir. Judge Boyer, Alfonso Ornelas,
Present.
Andrew Carranco,
Here.
Roque Vela Jr.,
Here.
Dr. Maria Reyes,
Here.
Cristina L. Hale,
Here.
Cliff Killam, Henry Sauvigny,
Here.
Jack Baham,
Here.
Tanya Judith Benavides.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Valdez. Mr. Valdez, let's go to item number 3. Are there any public comments? Has anybody signed up for any today?
No,
None?
not at this time.
Chairman, can I make a motion to excuse Mr. Killam, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Vela. There's a motion right there.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Vela. We have a second by Mr. Suanier. We have a call for the vote then. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None opposed. Let the record reflect that he has been excused from today's meeting. Thank you, Mr. Vela. Let's go to item number 4, the minutes. At this time, is it okay if we're going to table this? I heard-
I apologize, but yeah, we've been having some issues with the minutes, and so we don't have them prepared.
Okay.
They're almost done, but I'll probably send them out to you all next week so you can review them, and then we'll review from this meeting, so we'll do both for your approval at the next meeting. So I'd ask that you all could table this item for right now.
All right.
So moved.
Let's go ahead and have the motion here. I got Mr. Vela right now making the motion. I saw a second by Mr. Suanier. Let's have a call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None opposed? Let's go ahead and table the minutes for the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Valdez.
Thank you.
How about item number 5, discussion with possible actions to amend the city charter, Article 4, administrative departments.
So we're gonna read the section, we'll go section by section like similar to last time.
Yes, sir?
So section,
4.01 General Provision, Section A, Creation of Departments. The council may, by ordinance, establish city departments, offices, or agencies in addition to those created by this charter, and may prescribe the functions of all departments, offices, and agencies. No function assigned by this charter to a particular department, office, or agency may be discontinued or assigned to any other except as otherwise provided by law or this charter.
There's no discussion on that one. Let's go ahead and then go to item B.
Okay. Item B, Director of Departments. Department directors shall have supervisory responsibility over their respective departments and be subject to Section 3.05, 1 and 2, and other applicable provisions contained in this charter.
There's no other discussion. Let's go to the next section.
Okay, Section 4.02, City Attorney. The Chief Legal Counsel for the City of Laredo shall be the City Attorney. In representation of the City Attorney shall advise the Council, the City Manager, and all City Departments in legal matters. The City Attorney shall also represent the City in legal proceedings and shall perform such other duties as may be prescribed by this charter or by ordinance.
If there's no discussion on that, we'll go to the next section there.
The City Manager appoints the City Attorney subject to the confirmation by the affirmative vote of no less than 5 council members. The City Attorney shall serve until removed upon the recommendation of the City Manager and the affirmative vote of no less than 5 council members.
There's no discussion. Let's continue.
No, I want to
I'm
discuss
sorry,
this one.
Ms. Reyes?
Yeah, I would like to propose that we change this from an appointment to an elected office.
For city attorney,
Yeah,
do you
for
want to
city
propose it in the form of a motion, Ms. Reyes?
Yeah, I would like to motion.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I didn't know if anybody wanted to discuss this before I make the motion, but I would like to propose.
Either way, did you want a discussion regarding this? Or?
Yeah, if anybody wants to discuss, if not, we can just motion it to propose.
What would be the advantage of making it an
I
elected?
have been trying to propose this idea of checks and balances, right? And so I would like this idea of not everything being completely under the authority of the city council, especially since things haven't been working out. And we need neutral parties. I believe that the city attorney is one of them. So,
If I may, I believe in the last meeting we had in November, we did discuss this very briefly in regards to not just the attorney, but the other one was the city secretary.
Yeah.
The idea we floated was not quite the election, but instead raising the votes required on the city council from 5 to 6, requiring some, not quite a supermajority, but a firm majority on that. While I understand where an election may be prudent, it may be expedient in regard to allow for 6 votes. 5 votes is just a simple majority. A 6 vote would require a fair amount of political wrangling in order to get someone out in that regard.
Let me go ahead, just for the record, recognize that our city attorney is present. Part of the discussion that's going on right now was a proposal by Ms. Reyes and a discussion by Mr. Carranco regarding the position of city attorney, making it an elected position. And then Mr. Carranco giving out another proposal going, not necessarily an election, if I understood right, but more than not a supermajority, but to go from 5 to 6 city councilmen. Is that correct, Mr. Carranco?
If I recall, that's also what was recommended for the city secretary. And whatever.
The state balance? Is that your-
I would suppose that whatever we would do for the city secretary ought to be applicable for the city attorney, so that we keep some sort of uniformity in the charter.
If there is nobody else, I'd just like to make the comment, the city attorney is a very specialized animal. In other words, he is an attorney, he is licensed, and this is his specialty versus a political one. Sometimes it becomes a very limited pool that could apply to run, and you're going to get even a smaller percentage from that. I'm scared that we might make the pool too small. Though I do recognize Ms. Reyes' concern that she wants more open government, or I guess, would it be fair to say the voters will be?
no, I would like to structure our government to know, our history removed the strong mayor, right? Because of the patron system, and we told ourselves we shouldn't have concentrated power. But then we concentrated it on the city council. We don't have any checks and balances in our city. There is no one that can challenge the city council, especially in favor of the public. And so, while it could be politically challenging, even risky to put the city attorney and the secretary outside of the authority of the city council, I do believe qualifications can be put in place in order for the right person to run for that office. And if not, I do like the idea, it could be a great consensus to have a supermajority, but that doesn't take away this concentration of power under the city council. And so, I would like, even if we need to table this, to discuss this further.
So,
Yes, sir, Mr. Sauvigny.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see the point you're raising. However, I agree with the chair in that the city attorney is a specialized position, and there are, my experience in working with other municipalities is that it's tough to find, a city attorney who has that background and experience. And I'm afraid that if we open it to an election, then we would have candidates that, although we've put into place qualifications, are we really going to say you can't run for office if you've submitted, you meet the minimum requirements for being city attorney? And I would imagine the minimum requirement might be a law degree.
Absolutely.
And so then we elect a city attorney without experience in with city experience, but meeting the minimum requirement of a law degree. And is that not a little more chaotic? That's just my thought.
Thank you, Mr. Zuniga.
Can I-
Ms. Reyes, you
Yeah.
want to respond to that?
Yeah, I would just like to point out that in the state of Texas, we already elect city attorneys. And also, we elect all judges. But there are specific qualifications for all judges with the exception of administrative judges, right? Those are the only ones that have the minimum of a law degree. But all other ones are required to have certain level of experience when it comes to judging. So I'm not sure that we are, and I mean, Mr. Song can correct me on this, but we may not be limited to set certain limit of qualifications for an elected official when it comes to.
Mr. Chair, can I just say, I do want to clarify that it's not the city council, but actually the city attorney is appointed by the city manager rather than the council. They just affirm or.
No, I
Or
know
deny.
that, but the city manager is under the authority, is not an independent.
True.
It's not an independent power, and not only that, we have experienced even in recent history that even after the city manager comes and makes the best recommendations for our city, the city council has declined those recommendations. So the power is concentrated.
Actually, that's an example of distribution of power, that you don't have it. You have a check and balance. You had an executive branch that had a decision, and you had a legislative going, we're not in agreement, go retry it. Before we go any further, Mr. Valdez, you had your hand up, you would like to be recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to briefly, and I don't know if everyone knows that the city, when I know we're talking about city attorney, but since it was mentioned also city secretary, that they used to be elected. When it went away from a strong mayor to council, you still had elections as far as the city attorney and city secretary, and that was for several years. And then eventually, it became an appointed position. Council went away from that and became an administrative appointed position.
And,
So-
and I'll add to that, I remember we looked into that, and there's probably a handful of cities that elect their city attorney, and they're like tiny, minute cities, or,
That's, I don't think it's a lot.
no. It's very-
A recognition just on the question on judges, it really depends, Ms. Reyes. Are we talking about a court of original jurisdiction? And if it's on record, then it has to be an attorney that's a judge. If it's not a court of record, like Dorado used to be before, no, you don't have to be an attorney. But if you appeal, you get a de novo review versus you have an attorney, a court of record. No, now you appeal it, you go to the fourth court, you have to go up through the appellate process. There's now plenary jurisdiction. And there's a lot to be said for that. And on a separate note, as an attorney, you have to abide by the code of conduct, and he has ethical violations where he has to respond to his clients and stuff. And there is a check and balance in the profession that also applies. Even if someone puts pressure as an attorney, you also have a duty to say, I cannot do certain things. That is now beyond, and I'm gonna pump the brakes here. So I do like that ability. Was there any other hands? Yes, sir, Mr. Vela.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I gotta admit, I'm torn on this. I can see why you would want to take it to an election and get the general public more involved in our city government. But at the same time, you don't exactly know what you're going to get when you elect an official. Sometimes you get some really great elected officials, some are not so much. And more times than not, in a case like this, you're probably going to end up with an attorney that's running for office that meets the bare minimum, if you will. And I don't know if was there a second to this motion, Mr. Chairman?
No.
There was not. We're still in a part of discussion, and it hasn't been proposed as a motion. Is that correct, Ms. Reyes? You wanted it out as discussion at this time.
Right. If we cannot settle the discussion, we can table it with all the other items that we.
Okay. If there is no other discussion, does anybody have a motion they'd like to put forward?
May I?
Yes, sir, Mr. Vela, of course.
I'd like to motion time certain to our next meeting, also with some stipulations from staff to bring us some examples of other cities that elect both their city attorney and their city secretary, and to see just how that's transpiring and how that's working out for them.
Okay. We have a motion by Roque Vela. Do we,
I'd like to second that, but I'd like to see if you can also amend to see what the city council structure is on the removal of city attorney, the threshold on that.
Sounds great.
Whether it's 5 or 6 or majority or whatnot.
Accepted.
okay, fair enough. So you accept that amendment, Mr. Vela, and we'll make that the original motion?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion by Mr. Vela. We have a second by Andrew Carranco. That means there's a call for the vote. Yes, sir, Mr. Valdez.
Clarification, when you say removal, is it removal of the current charter or the cities we're gonna look at?
By the current charter.
The current charter
Charter's here.
is
Or
already
not the
stated.
current charter. Here, we need 5 votes to remove that. That's just 1 over a simple majority. I'd like to see how other cities would enact or would appoint or replace a city attorney by how,
Okay.
if they need a supermajority or not, effectively.
That's fine. All right, thank you.
We have a motion by Roque Vela. We have a second by Andrew Carranco. We have a call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? None opposed, let the record reflect. Those with 1 abstention of Mr. Killam. We're ready for the next part.
Section 5.01 Municipal Court. There shall be a court known as the Municipal Court of the City of Laredo with such jurisdiction, powers, and duties as are given and/or prescribed by the laws of the state of Texas.
Any discussion? No, we could continue.
Section 5.02 Judge of the Municipal Court. The judge of the municipal court shall preside over and administer the operation of the municipal court. The judge shall be an attorney licensed to practice in the courts in the state of Texas and shall reside within the city limits. The judge shall be elected in the city at large. No person shall be elected as a judge for more than 2 terms. The vacating of office by the municipal court judge by resignation or otherwise shall constitute a full term irrespective of the length of time served for a 4-year term with a limit of two elected 4-year terms in addition to any time served through appointment or election to an unexpired term. A judge shall not engage in the private practice of law, notwithstanding this prohibition, a judge may act pro se and may, without compensation, give legal advice to and draft or review documents for a member of the judge's immediate family. The judge of the municipal court shall receive such salary as shall be fixed by ordinance.
Any discussions regarding this?
I have a question.
Yes,
if
Ms.
Our city attorney knows, is this term limitation, the 2 terms, is that mandated by statute? Or is it something that we could look into possibly?
That's just by our charter, which is consistent with the terms of the council members and so forth, but it's not by statute.
And I think maybe you, with your experience, but would be able to like add to that. I don't know if 2 terms, I think if you have a good judge in place, is that enough time?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you from a personal point of view, it feels like there's never enough time in politics. You always feel like there's one more thing you have to take care of, one more evil you have to fight, or one more. So there is that. On the other hand, I'm going to tell you municipal court is a very powerful court. And you're going to say, well, it deals with parking tickets, violations. Yeah, it's the little ant, but I guarantee you it visits every house in the city of Laredo at least once a year. It's got that reach out ability. It has more jury trials. It collects more funds. Like, you could put all the district courts together, they don't even come close. City of Laredo, you're looking at that as a number 3 source of revenue. It's not supposed to be a revenue maker. Courts are very expensive and they cost city governments money. It's just one Laredo deals with such high numbers because we are in the import-export business, I guess. It's the nature of the beast. It really is incredible. City of Laredo is known through the state of Texas what it collects. So, and again, we have examples of fine judges that have had the office and we see where it could take us, and that's a very good thing for the city of Laredo. And I like its independence. I like that they answer to the people. People come up and go, I put you in office, I could take you. You are absolutely correct. I'm your public servant. And that's who you answer to. I'll share sometimes the city government could try to put pressure, go, hey, we need to, and you need that independence where he goes, I need to look at the case. I need to judge each case on its value, and this is what I'm going to do. So I do like that independence of a vote. And if you look at the Texas cities, the old Spanish ones, they still have elected city attorneys. It's just something that seems to be retained. We look at El Paso, we'll look at all our other contemporaries. too.
Judges.
Yeah.
Judges.
Does anybody have any discussion or would like to add to that comment, or? Yes, sir.
I do have a
Mr.
question.
Caranco, I'm sorry.
Continuity speaking, two elected, four-year terms. For the other elected offices in our community, do they also, there are no other offices that have term limits, so to speak, right?
City council has, the mayor has.
City council, mayor, but no, for all the elected positions, we do have term limits, is that correct?
That's the only.
Only city.
Clarify, yes, city elected officials, yes, there are term limits.
Okay,
All the county ones are.
But not for the county.
not for the county, right?
County or state.
And
Yeah,
state.
so as judges, that's the only judge that has its term limits.
Christina, would you like to propose removing that term limit? Is that what's on your
Not that
mind?
maybe you'd be in the best position. I do know that we've had great judges in the past, and to be limited by that may not be always in the best interest, but
I really do believe in the voters. I think they get a good sense of what you do and what you don't do, and their will reigns. I kind of like that. I like that they get to make the call. Yes, sir.
There is a power of incumbency. And
Yes.
the power of incumbency grows the longer a person is in a position, which is why sometimes we see elected officials, we're not talking locally, on a higher, another level of government, they're quote unquote forever. And I think that's also something that, I know you're not proposing that. But if we were to change this or maybe increase it, maybe be specific about the term we're going to be increasing it to.
Maybe as a compromise, instead of 2, is there another number you would think of, sir?
I'm fine with 2, but if we're going to
Okay.
change it, we would change it to.
Leave a number in there,
Leave
leave a
number.
term limit,
Yeah.
don't just leave it blank, okay, fair enough.
Judge,
Yes, sir, Mr.
On the, let's see here, on city council, I believe in the last one, we also discussed the, I think we all like term limits, but the issue was not so much the term limit as much as the inability for an elected official to return back to their seat. And there was a question whether we wanted to make them sit out for a term, 2 terms, or 3 terms. And maybe that's, because at this point in time, if you're a judge and you're a good judge, you're out in 2 terms, and or if you're a bad judge, you're out in 2 terms, and that's just fine, because term limits, I think, are important. That said, if you do have a good judge and someone who wants to be involved in council or as a judge or whatnot, would it not be fair to maybe put in there after a period of 3 terms, having passed, even could run again? I think 3 terms might be a good one in the sense that that's far enough in the past that you wouldn't have too much. You really want to be back in the game if you want to go after 3 terms, if that's fair. I think, did we discuss that at the last meeting for city council? I don't quite recall.
No, we didn't. I would like to speak.
Yes, Ms. Reyes,
I'm completely against this.
you're against, I'm
I'm
sorry.
against this whole idea of removing terms, of allowing people to come back to office. Laredo exists in a history of the few running for office. There is control by certain families and now even a political class in our city. And there is not going to be any opportunity for the others to run for office if we continue doing this. So this idea of removing terms of office do not fit the culture and the lack of understanding of what power means, without allowing the political class to continue the corruptive exercise of power that they do have. So I am going to be very strongly speaking against this. We see that corruption even going all the way to the federal government, so I'm not sure where this idea of removing terms is coming from. I bring up the idea of making an office elected, and you guys are like, I don't know about that, I don't know if we should, and then you say, no, let's leave it up to people. Okay, do we trust the people or we don't trust them? I want to be, all I'm saying is I'm going to be against this and voice it very explicitly, because our people need to stop allowing this political class to be in power. So anything that allows that, I'm against it.
If I may just address as devil's advocate, the opposite side, there is a certain bit of what would be the term I'd say? Experience, it comes in. So once you do have it, you do want someone that knows how to administer it, because there's going to be a slow process regarding that. So I think when they talk about term limits, they were saying, well, you don't want to have built-in obsolescence so quick. Let's click on something even harder. Let's say the term is for only 1 day. You can only be municipal court for 1 day, and we switch to the next person. We're going to go through 365 this year. And you could even imagine, because I'm using a ridiculous example, how it would take some experience to, okay, well, there's going to be a process. How much was he able to accomplish in that 1 day versus you give him a little bit?
I just would like to say, I was a professor at the university level of public administration.
Okay.
I taught classes on state government, and I also educated future politicians. So I understand your point of view.
Okay.
I understand it. I just don't think our city right now, in the political class we have in power, allows for that kind of opening the door. Now, I'm not the only voting person here. We are a committee, and it will ultimately be decided majority vote. But all I'm saying is I am strongly against it, and I will continue to voice my opinion against this point because of where we are as a city. That's all.
Noted.
I think if I may just point
Yes,
out
Ms.
that,
Benavides.
we're looking at section 5.02, but if we go on to the next section, when it comes to transitions and the ins and outs of what it takes to run the municipal court, the judge doesn't act on
So,
alone, right, on his
Right.
behest. So we could also consider the clerk doesn't have any sort of term limit or stipulations to be changing as judge transitions happen with the natural expiration of terms.
very good point, Ms. Benavides, and there are different level of clerks, and you get blessed with some that have been there for so long. They're level 3, and that gives you different obligations with the state of Texas and stuff. And then if you're looking at your associate judges, you're right, you're building up a professional basis in and of yourself. The only thing is all orders at the end, or all power, comes from municipal court, and that comes from the Texas Constitution that recognized Laredo to have a municipal court. So the signature becomes magic. When the judge signs it, he gives out his order. That's his finding of fact, conclusion of law. So that's where you're to see a merger. I think what we've been discussing is maybe getting close to that hybrid. That's why we'll hear stuff about term limits, but do you want it where they could go out? Well, Mr. Caranco brings out a very good point. If there's enough time, it could become stale. We don't see that growing of roots where it's only just one person. 12 years is a big amount of time if you're looking at it. If you look at voter bases, 12 years from now, they're going to be under 20. It's a group that, they're in middle school, we haven't even seen. They're the power base that are coming up in 12 years. And that would be who that person would be running up against. So I think we're talking about some good hybrid and some good discussions, and we appreciate that. Again, Ms. Reyes, it was noted what you're talking about. And right now, in the spirit of conversation, we're looking at all angles. We're trying to be creative, right? And see if there's other options. With that, is there any motions or any further discussion regarding this section? If not, we can move on to the next section.
The associate municipal judges shall be licensed to practice in the courts of the state of Texas. The municipal court judge shall recommend one associate municipal court judge, and the city manager shall recommend one associate municipal court judge, and both must be confirmed by the affirmative vote of no less than 5 council members.
Any discussion regarding that, or? I can share with you that that was a compromise, and what you started seeing there was, you see city management putting in their will too, and the judge will have to work with that person. The judge could say, you know what, I'm not going to call that associate in theory and say that they will not sit in it, But there, you saw where there was a blending of, we want to hear what city management has to say, and we have different people appointing into office. It seems to be working. I think we have some great associates. I've seen it work excellent for us. I don't know if it's something we want to address at this time, or if not, let's go ahead and move to the next subject.
Section 5.03, Clerk of the Municipal Court. There shall be a clerk of the municipal court who shall be nominated by the city manager and then confirmed by the affirmative vote of no less than 5 council members, and who shall serve at the pleasure of the council. The status of the clerk of the municipal court shall be that of the department director. The clerk shall have the power to administer oaths and affidavits, make certificates, affix the seal of the court thereto, and otherwise perform any and all acts necessary in issuing process of such court and conducting the business thereof.
Any discussion regarding this matter? I can share with you, a lot of times people think that the municipal court judge is the department head. I mean, no, he's not. He's the elected official. He represents the judicial branch, but you have your city clerk that has to respond, go to the department head meetings, turn in a budget, live within the budget, ask for any variances, make sure there's compliance. There's a whole lot of things that the clerk has to do. The judge has to work with that clerk hand in hand. You can't have one without the other, or you'll start seeing them trip down. I think we have a very good system right now, and it's good that it is the way it is. You're getting there a professional class. You're getting individuals which I'm sure, Mr. Vela, you've seen, Ms. Aurelio, people that have dedicated their lives to the city of Laredo. They've worked inside, and they're the pillars, they're the strength of all these departments. They're the ones that get it done. They're the ones, remember where the contracts are, what are the pending stuff. So we have a very, very good group of people, and I like that that's being recognized, that they have that independence. Any other discussion? If not, we could proceed to the next point.
There shall be such deputy clerks of the municipal court as may be authorized by the council, who shall have authority to act for and on behalf of the clerk of the municipal court, and who shall be appointed by the clerk of the municipal court.
Any discussion regarding this? If not, we can go to the next part.
Article 6, Financial Procedures, Section 6.01, Fiscal Year. The city shall operate on a fiscal year commencing on the 1st of October and ending on the last day of September.
Any discussion regarding that, the fiscal year?
Just a point of clarification.
Yes, sir, Mr. Caranco.
Really, the staff, does that work well? The actual 1st of October and the last day of September?
Yeah, that's something that's on my head more.
Yeah, I mean, it follows the federal government, obviously, it's just their fiscal year as far as your budget goes, as opposed to a calendar year. So, you make your appropriations and it kind of, it also flows, from the funding from the federal and state government, so.
Just want to be sure.
So we're good.
Excellent. Any further discussion? If not, if we could continue.
Section 6.02, Submission of Budget. At least 60 days before the end of the fiscal year, the city manager shall present to the council a budget for the ensuing fiscal year with an accompanying budget message.
Any discussion regarding this?
Yes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Sounier.
For those members of the committee that have had experience here with the city, how practical has this been? Has the city generally met that deadline for the submission of the budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
In fact, you'll see items beforehand as it's getting closer and the budget is running out. You'll see line items that have to be moved, so it keeps on functioning, but it does. It forces those hard deadlines, Mr. Sounier, so I think it has. Ray, for the next one. Yes.
Section 6.03, Budget Message. The city manager's message shall explain the budget in fiscal terms and in terms of work programs and capital programs. It shall outline the proposed financial policies embodied in the budget of the city for the ensuing fiscal year. The message shall describe the important features of the budget and indicate any major changes from the current year in financial policies, expenditures, and revenues, together with the reason for such changes. It shall include a summary of the city's debt position and major policies and changes in this area. The city manager may include any other items deemed necessary.
Do we have any discussion regarding this?
I would like to suggest,
Yes, Ms. Reyes.
and I'm dealing with this argument in my head of incrementalism, you know, how many things we can ask to change in this charter. We discussed last time we met, right? How difficult that's gonna be, but I would like to put forward the idea that there needs to be some type of document that is publicly available in general public terms for the public to understand the budget. I think it was in the past 2 years, maybe 3 years, I don't know, that they tried to implement Come and Learn About the Budget classes, right? Oh,
I don't
okay,
recall,
well,
but
they
the
did.
budget is available online.
I know it's available online, and I tried to read it, but I would like, I don't know, is there any way to make it
Like a
public
Cliff
friendly?
Notes version, or what, simpler?
Yeah, public friendly, because I've looked at your budget. I even look at the university's budget. And to tell you the truth, I cannot make ends of it. And I have a PhD. Now imagine someone that doesn't.
I'm gonna tell you something you probably might shock you a little bit, but most council members don't understand the budget either.
You see? No, I believe that. I believe that because I've asked questions and they don't know how to answer them. So,
I mean, it's a complicated set of numbers, and some people are good with numbers, some people are not good with numbers. And that's one of the beauties about city council, is you get collectively 9 different people that bring
Right.
different strengths to the
And I
table.
mean, and we don't have to implement it here, but could I suggest, I don't know, some kind of, I don't know.
Well,
Just give me advice.
Well,
That's all I'm saying.
if I could give you just this, our budget has it's general accepted accounting principles, but there's a different standard for public entities, and they have to follow that. They can't invent a system that's different. In other words, you have to show how you're doing your depreciation, how it's being moved, and it has to follow the state guidelines. Short of that, if I understand you right, Ms. Reyes, it's not a change of that, but maybe a better explanation, would you say, or?
Yeah.
Okay, because at all times, and this goes out to the public, and the public has a right to make a formal request of any public documentation and ask a question. What do you mean by pencil account on line item 14A? And he has to answer that for you. Oh, okay, because why did we use more pencils in 2023 and in 2024 it went up 600%? I need an explanation. And you have a right to request that and do that request. Does anybody have any further discussion or would like to make a motion regarding that, or?
Should I, who's the accountant for our city?
You know, we have a CFO, but I happen to have a doctorate in business administration. I do understand. So, I don't know how else to do, but if I may, I believe that 603, the budget message, is how the city manager is able to communicate the importance of the budget. Maybe that's just what you want to advise the city manager, to make that message more understandable to the public, as opposed to, you know, the balance sheet being, like you say, sir, it's GAAP form government. We have to follow that format.
I was just gonna
Mr.
mention that.
Valdez.
Yes. As far as the message, I think Zoni hit it on the nail. When the city manager does a presentation, or management does a presentation to council for the budget, we use a pie chart. This is the percentage of money that's coming in. It's more, I don't want to say simpler, but it's more easier to understand than what, I guess, if you look at the budget book, right? Because you do have to kind of understand that process. So those documents do exist. And so maybe, again, we're talking about the charter. I don't think we would make it simple or make it easier or clearer to understand. I think that's just a process that we can do internally and present it, whatever was presented. Normally that's up on the website. So maybe just identify it a little bit more clear for the general citizens to be able to understand it.
Why do you think I'm bringing this up?
We're dealing with a section. You think
Well, no,
that-
yeah, but why am I bringing this issue of clear and clear message and
Because the city spends
transparency?
too much money and people want to be able to understand why.
The people
Or people
distrust
should
our
understand
government. Yeah. If you talk to the average Laredoan, they really think we're stealing their money.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
I don't wanna argue with everybody.
I mean, and I
Just
just
a little
wanted to-
point
yeah.
of clarification, I don't mean to interrupt anyone, but when you see me mention your name, it's just because we're talking generalities,
Right.
not to any individual, and we can propose questions, but not accusatory to any one person.
Oh, no, I didn't accuse
No,
anything.
no, but-
I'm making a general statement over the distrust that our citizens have for us. So,
I don't wanna come off.
Mr. Valdez, yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to come off as, I don't agree. I think I agree with you, but I also agree that there are people, no matter what you give them, you're never going to satisfy them.
That's
You can
true.
give them everything in bold letters and, big old pencil, and they're still
gonna
don't
say
trust government, no matter what. So at the end of the day, I think that you all need to look at what makes sense to be in the charter, and not so much a train of thought of, well, this, people are saying the government doesn't work. Well, that's their opinion. Not all the opinions are the same, though. Some people do believe in the government and that it's working. But that's up to you all. As far as this item, I think it's fine, but I mean, you all are the ones that are
no, I
charge
like
here.
the fact that you guided me into saying this could be an internal process. What I would like from you is to tell me how I can make this happen before I move on.
We can post it online. That's as simple as that. Whatever was presented to the council, it's not the big thick book. Yes, they do have that document, but what is presented in his presentation is very simple pie graphs, where the money's going, where the money's coming from, what we expect, actuals, projections.
There was a line item transfer, why was that available and not
Thank
factored
you.
in?
To that detail, that probably won't be there because these are generalities as far as this is the budget for the city, the whole city. We're not going item by item. They are in there, in the message, in the heart of the actual accounting document. And if people have questions, they can always ask. That's not a problem either.
With that, is there any further discussion? And if not, Ms. Ace, do you want to make a motion regarding that? Or
No,
as maybe to visit or, no? Okay.
because I asked for advice. I wanted to know how to handle this, and he said it's better handled internally.
I do believe
Yeah.
we can do maybe a better job internally of presenting it. If you go to every section of the budget, there's a clear summary at the beginning, and then they go into all the details, right? So every summary tells you what each department, where they spend, where it comes from. I don't think that needs to be in the charter. Just my opinion, right? I guess I don't sit up there, sorry.
No.
Go back to-
Thank you.
My opinion, sorry.
No, thank you.
And just to share, Mr. Valdez was a councilman, and then he's also served as, so all this actually helps us, because sometimes we'll have theory, and then we'll also have, but when the rubber meets the road, we have this situation. Now, Mr. Reyes, I want to join you. It's very important for us to follow the money. Follow it will explain everything, that's a very powerful tool. Or the opposite, you know what, Ms. Reyes, I don't have any money for your project. Guess what I just did there, even though everyone might have been in agreement for it. So I understand what you're saying about being more transparent, especially with something as important as the taxpayers' money and how it is spent, why is it spent, and who's doing the spending, so. Thank you for your comments. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add? And if not, if we could continue with the next item.
Section 6.04, budget. The budget shall provide a complete financial plan of all city funds and activities for the ensuing fiscal year, and except as required by law or this charter, shall be in the form of, as the city manager deems desirable or the council may require. The budget shall begin with a clear general summary of its contents, shall show in detail all estimated income indicating the proposed property taxes levy, with estimated collectible and uncollectible amounts, and all proposed expenditures, including debt service, for the ensuing fiscal year, and shall be so arranged as to show comparative figures for actual and estimated income and expenditures of the current fiscal year and actual income and expenditures of the preceding fiscal year.
Any discussion regarding that?
Chairman? may
Yes,
I-
sir, Mr. White.
Thank you, sir. So I mentioned earlier that you'd be surprised how many council members don't understand the budget. And one of the many reasons why that is to my surprise, when I was in council, and one of the reasons why I was able to put so many projects on the ground in a short period of time was because I did have a good understanding of the budget. But more than anything else, the budget process is a 6-month process. As soon as the fiscal year starts, the staff starts to plan the next budget. I actually participated in those meetings. Now, at first, I was met with a lot of hesitation. Council members don't normally take part of that process, and frankly, staff doesn't like it. Most of the time, the budget gets put together and then it gets presented in a I think it's a 3-day or 4-day workshop, and more times than not, the council members just say yes. They may add a couple of things or take a couple of things out, but for the most part, it just gets its blessing. What I'd like to see, and I don't even know if this is the right section, or we might have to create a whole other section. So in order for our council members to understand the budget better, and also so that they're not so reliant on discretionary money, which I'll get into later, because discretionary money is just a lot easier to be able to kind of throw back and forth. If we allow them to be part of the budget process and actually build in their projects into the budget, instead of giving them a blank check, so to speak, would be a discretionary money, then maybe we can get ahead of some of those issues, the lack of knowledge and at times fiscal irresponsibility, depending on the council members. So my motion, what I'd like to do is to mandate staff to bring in council members 2 at a time during the budget process at least once a month. So basically 6 times, to allow the council members to participate in the budget process, but also build in some of their projects in the budget as well. So that once you build in, when you sell a bond, except for discretionary money, when you sell a bond, they are specific to projects. Like, you can't sell $1 million bond for a swimming pool and then, but it's for, no, so it's for that project now. So now we're ensuring that the money is being spent where they say it was going to be spent. So that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there any discussion regarding this motion?
So if I understand,
Mr. Suñé, and then I'll recognize Ms. Benavides.
thank you, the council members would be invited to participate.
Mandates.
Oh,
Now, they don't have to.
Yeah, because
They don't have to.
Well, that's what I'm saying, when you say mandate, that means they have to be there, or the mandate is that they're required to be invited?
I guess allowed
Yeah.
to participate.
Got it.
And unfortunately, the fact is, most probably won't.
Right.
But at least the ones that do won't be met with hesitation if they
That's
so
good
choose.
To avoid what happened towards you.
I'm not speaking because it ended up working out very well. I mean, once they understand I'm there for the right reasons and actually understand it, then it works out well.
I have
That's a good
a
point.
follow-up question.
Yes, sir,
to
Mr.
that.
Chairman.
So, when the city staff is putting together a budget, the idea is that, the belief is that they're working on a plan, and I'll use a simple example. You have a street paving program, and you have the districts where you're paving the streets, and it's in this order. And the council person then can come in and say, well, I disagree with that order. I think in my district, you should be doing it this way instead of this way. Is that the kind of participation you're looking at?
No, I would say more just to be able, first of all, and I'm glad you brought up street paving because that's something else I want to address later. But we don't have, so we sell bonds, 20-year bonds to pave streets that are going to last 10 years, which
Right.
is just bad business. It makes no sense. But more so just to be able to, number one, again, be able to understand the budget and the complexities of the budget, where the monies come from, what you can and cannot do with certain monies. But more than anything else is whatever their pet projects are. All council members have pet projects. For me, it was Bartlett, and then it turned into some other things. And we were able to accomplish the extension of Bartlett because it was built into the budget. And we actually ended up using utilities money to be able to build that. So that's a project that couldn't be done unless, we had a staff that worked well with, and I actually participated and pushed behind the scenes. Most council members, for whatever reason, like to show up to every 2 Mondays out of the month, give staff direction, and then think that it's just gonna happen and then never show up again, because they're never there, in between council meetings. So this, and some of it's because they don't have time, some of it's because maybe they just don't want to, or they don't care to. But this allows them and almost invites them to be able to come in and be part of that process so that they can be more knowledgeable and participate in the budget process.
I have
Ms.
a-
Benavides, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have a question and also a suggestion for us to look into. My question is for you, Roque. Are you, is this assuming that discretionary funds would either be, would these funds come out of the discretionary funds that are currently a part of at each city council member's disposal, or would this be just in addition to or separate into the fiscal year?
Great question, ma'am. Honestly, and again, in a separate item, I would love to just get rid of discretionary funds. That might be a little bit too ambitious. I'd like to put a cap, but we'll talk about that later. But this would allow them to not be so reliant on discretionary funds, because again, a lot of them just, frankly, they just don't understand how to be able to leverage the monies, or they're just, all due respect, just a little too lazy to be able to actually put those projects together. So this is like a discretionary funds, like a credit card that we're handing them, and they're just spending it. So this allows them to not be so reliant on that credit card and actually be part of the process. And again, so that we're not just giving them a credit card and not even having any type of oversight as to how they're spending it. If it's in the budget, then again, once we borrow money, it's specific to a certain project, and by law, you have to use it for that project.
So
So
here-
this kind of handcuffs them
Yes.
to be more fiscally responsible.
Yeah, thank you for answering my question. So here's where my suggestion comes in. I would say that we should look into models of participatory budgeting, which has been a democratic process that has been used in over 3,000 localities across the country. It started in Porto Alegre, Brazil, back in 1989. And this would allow for an extensive process that really engages the community, that really pushes city council members not only to understand the budget, but also to truly understand the needs of their districts, and to be able to implement these proposals into the budget at the beginning of the fiscal year, and they would essentially come out of that discretionary fund that they currently have, right? So I'm not saying let's get rid of the discretionary funds right now. I'm not saying let's keep them. But let's explore the potential of piloting a participatory budgeting process and then being able to really enforce and make the processes so that city council members have to engage with the budget in this way, and their communities do too.
I think that's a great idea. And it kind of speaks to what you were kind of wanting as well.
I think it's two different
Ms.
parts.
Reyes? Yes.
I would like to speak, that I think it's two different parts. First of all, my heart just skipped a bit, right? It does that with Tanya anyway. So, because it's like you jump from one end of the spectrum to the other. I love it, but I do like both ideas. I like the idea of piloting a program, but I also like the idea of educating our councilmen, but I don't want to make it optional. I mean, when you run
talked
for
about a
office.
mandatory invitation.
But I just want to bring up, when you run for office, right, Tanya? I mean, at the federal level, they do have an education program in place to educate people into the role of government, the purpose of the budget. I understand that this hands over a lot of power into the bureaucratic structure of our government, but it's the only stable structure we have. But it would be good if that education is in place I love that idea, because it will educate them into the processes they're ignorant in. So, yeah, I'm just not sure of making it optional for people that have one office. I think it should be part of their responsibility.
It's a very good point. I mean, when I came into council, I came into a very stable council. I was the only new council members. All had either won re-election or were about to term out. I was lucky enough to have a mentor that understood city government and the budget that I learned from. And then once he left, then I took that. And now I don't know if there's anybody really handling that transition. Like, hey, something as simple as this is how a city council meeting works. Things like that, they don't understand. So I think that's a great idea, make it part of the charter, and to make sure that we're at least giving them a chance to be successful, whereas right now, we're just kind of throwing them to the wolves and, sink or swim, so to speak.
I'm sorry, yes, Ms. Hale, and then I'll recognize you for
I'm
this.
correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if it's being enforced, but there is an ordinance that speaks to that where there's like an orientation and they're supposed to, yes.
No, it's not
I don't
being
know
enforced.
if it's, okay.
And they
I
used to
know-
have the
I-
retreat, remember when they first
Well,
started,
there
they would
were-
all come in and.
And they were required to go to TML and take all these classes, but the ordinance does provide for that, some type of training and all these different issues. So I don't know if it's being.
Mr. Valdez, you had a point.
Yeah, no, I was gonna mention the same thing Ms. Hale just mentioned, that I think that right now when they get elected, I think within the first month, they have to go to training. And normally it's out of town, it's TML, and they're the ones that, provide, open meetings, there's like 3 or 4 different types of trainings that they're gonna deal throughout their lifetime of being a council member and elected official at the city level. And I just wanted a clarification from Mr. Vela, if he can.
Yes, sir.
When you say, staff is mandated to invite council members to participate in the budget meetings within the department, do they participate or they're just there to listen and observe?
Participate, I would, and again, this is always going to be a discussion back and forth, and that doesn't mean, obviously, they can't give you any direction or directives or motion clearly, but just to take their feedback and be able to potentially build that in whatever it is that they want into the budget. Now, I know it's asking for a lot, and it's a lot easier said than done, especially when you have 9 going in there.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier when it was just me, and I kind of took the money that I needed and did the projects I wanted. I wasn't fighting over scraps, if you will. But yeah, I can see where you're going with this.
Well, no, I'm just saying because I know normally it's a process, it's a long process that the city manager and management does with each department over several months. Like you said, I think it was mentioned over, we're already starting. For this coming year, and so it's the city manager's budget that he presents to council, and I know it sounded like you're mostly concerned with, council district projects, and I've been of the opinion too, that if there's no discretionary, there's still gonna be projects because council will have them motioned into the budget, right?
Yeah, exactly, yes, exactly.
I just wanna know if you meant to participate, like give direction during those.
Well, I think it would happen, the answer is participate, and I think
But can't vote and give
organically.
direction because then it's probably a walking corn.
Exactly. So, but I think organically, how exactly that mechanism, that relationship's going to work, can get figured out behind closed doors, if you will. And I hate using the term closed doors, but that's just the reality of the situation. And yeah, I think once you go through all the council members, and they're gonna ask for everything under the sky, as we know.
Yeah.
And that's where staff's job comes in, to be able to make sense of the whole thing and build it into the budget. And then it still gets presented at the end of the year, which of course needs to get approved. And that's going to turn into a whole different discussion, which is probably a good thing, because, well, I'm sure most of you have seen most of those budget workshops where half of them are back there, or half of them are already paying attention. Now, they've been engaged, they're invested in it. So, and there's probably gonna be some things that are left out that they wanted, and you'll see a much more active, intense meeting where we're actually working out on a budget, as opposed to where we're just kind of, following the rules and because we have to.
I'll share my personal view as a voter or taxpayer. Certain councilmen, they get the picture. So they don't take no for an answer, and okay, so we're waiting for a call from TxDOT, okay? And what else did you do? Or you could say, okay, I spent 4 years and they never returned a call, so nothing got done. Versus other ones, why? No, okay, I wanna do it this way. How about we move this guy to come do that? Utility coming in, rec has that capability, they could come in, take care of this, can we move that? And that's where you'll see certain councilmen that really get the picture and they're responding to the district, other ones. And it's real hard for us to mandate something, because you could mandate for me to show up, doesn't mean I have to actively participate. I could, okay, did I check in, did I sign in? Bye guys, this is fun. Versus, no, I want to know the process. I want the whys, and I want to.
Yeah, and as you know, the ones that want to be successful and don't take no for an answer are going to be successful. We're going to figure out a way to accomplish what we said we were going to accomplish. And others are just going to kind of take a back seat and just, eat their dinners every.
Well, they never returned our calls, so TxDOT never.
Yeah. But going back to this, is this just opens up the door, if you will, to making it that much easier for council members to be a part of the process.
We still have it as a motion. Is there any other discussion? If not, I guess if we could have just a clarification of that, because we also want to walk that fine line. We don't want to micromanage neither. We want just support, if you would state it clearly. Yes, sir, Mr. Sertan.
It then no longer becomes the city manager's
Budget,
budget
yeah.
being presented, especially if it gets tweaked by enough council people so that basically the council's deciding and the budget looks like, and they're gonna decide on projects that not always, they're more visual than they are practical sometimes. Not always, but there are some things that have to be done in terms of infrastructure. All you have to do is see our pipes and sewer system here, and that's because it's not sexy to replace underground stuff. And here we are now in Laredo with billions worth of work to be done because no one said, my priority as a council person is going to be to take care of the underground. Because how do you run on that? You know, I'm not disagreeing with you, Mr. Vela. I'm just pointing out that, you know, we have to be careful not to go to the other area.
What if we do, right now, the budget workshop is what, 4 days at the end when the city manager presents? What if we do a budget workshop once a month during the budget process? So essentially, it's a 6-month-long process. You have 6 workshops every month where the council meets collectively. They get to participate. There's a dialogue going back and forth. And then at the end, we still do the budget workshop because it has to be presented to the people. But we're essentially adding 6 more budget workshops once a month during the process.
And that's open to all council members,
Yes,
right?
it'll be open to the public.
I like that better. Just if anyone heard Mr. Valdez said a little comment, a little magic word, walking quorum. You have to watch out for that. Okay, we have these 2, so I'm gonna wait for
And
the
this
next
takes care
2.
of that.
Now there's 5, so this is what we're gonna, yeah, that's frowned upon and cannot be done. That's
And
what mine is.
this would take care of that.
Yes, as long as everyone has
Posted.
open, there you go. We have not had God bless you, we have a walking quorum.
Yes.
So do you wanna make it a formal motion, Mr.
Yes,
Ron?
yes, so I
Mr. Vela.
rescind my original motion, and my motion would be to incorporate a budget workshop once a month during the budget process.
Second.
We have a motion by Roque Vela. We have a second by Tanya Benavides. We have a call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? None opposed, with 1 abstention here for Mr. Killen.
Thank you.
And with that, we're ready to go to the next item.
It shall indicate in separate sections, Section 1, the proposed goals and objectives and expenditures for current operations during the ensuing fiscal year, detailed for each fund by organization unit and program purpose or activity, and the method of financing such expenditures.
Are we okay with that? Let's go ahead and go to number 2.
Okay, Section 2, proposed capital expenditures during the ensuing fiscal year, detailed for each fund by organization unit when practicable, and the proposed method of financing each such capital expenditure.
Any discussion? If not, let's go ahead and go to number 3.
Number 3, the anticipated income and expense and profit and loss for the ensuing year for each utility or other enterprise fund operated by the city.
Any discussion? Let's go to number 4.
Number 4, the bonded debt and other indebtedness of the city, showing the debt redemption and interest requirements, the debt authorized and unissued, the condition of the sinking funds, and the borrowing capacity of the city. If at any time the general fund balance falls below 15% of appropriated funds, staff will develop a plan approved by the city council to be implemented during the ensuing fiscal year to restore the fund balance to 15%.
Any discussion? Let's go to number 5.
No funds, tax proceedings, or appropriations will be set aside specifically for any non-city government function, activity, department, agency, or firm unless entities have entered into a contract, agreement, engagement, or study with the city, and such contract, agreement, engagement, or study is included in the budget as finally approved and adopted by the council.
No discussion. Let's go to number 6.
Number 6, excess carryover funds from a prior fiscal year may be appropriated in the ensuing fiscal year for one-time appropriations only. Such funds shall not be used for recurring annual operating costs. For any fund, the total of proposed expenditure shall not exceed the total of estimated income plus carried forward fund balance exclusive of reserves.
Yes, sir. Mr. Fella.
Mr. Chairman, bear with me. 'Cause I had an idea that I was going to propose under the capital improvement, but now reading this, so my original idea, when I first got to city council, we were collecting $67 million a year in property taxes. This past year, I believe it's $99 million that we're collecting in property tax, a huge jump in 10, I guess it's been 10 years, 11 years. And all that, as you know, goes to the general fund, and I always call the general fund the black hole. Money it's never enough money, and it's always just being taken. And as we all know, a lot of that goes to fire and police, and you can never put a price on the things, the services that they provide for our community till you're elected, and you have to put a price on it, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that we've never been able to get our hands around is keeping our infrastructure up to par. A lot of that is because we don't put enough money into it, and also because we're the largest internet port in North America. The last time we put any significant money towards street paving, we actually sold a $10 million revenue bond against our utilities department. The way we were able to rationalize that is our utilities department was going in there, ripping up our streets to replace water lines, so that's how we were able to sell it to the bonding companies. So my idea, twofold. One is taking 10% of all property taxes collected, so in this case it would be $9 million, and dedicating that to street paving and or CIP projects. Right now there is no revenue for street paving. Again, we sell bonds for 20 years. That last 10 years, it's just bad business, makes no sense. So this does two things. Is one, it gives a revenue source to street paving, and two, it takes some of that money out of that black hole so that we can, again, force our council to be fiscally responsible. You take some money out, then just like we all did during COVID, right? When money just stopped flowing during quarantine, we all figured it out. It's kind of the same scenario. But either that and or this excess carryover, dedicate that towards street paving and or CIP. One or both. I like the idea of both. Maybe we do 5% of property taxes, and then the rest of this going to street paving and or CIP projects. And I'm not making a motion, I just like to put that for discussion and then see where this goes.
So in other words,
Sernier?
thank you. Anything that's in excess for that fiscal year is automatically earmarked for up to 5% of.
No, 5% of property taxes collected.
Right, it's for the infrastructure.
It's for infrastructure and CIP projects.
But you mentioned a percentage coming from the carry.
No, I was bouncing back and forth. This just came to me when I looked at it. My original idea was 10% of property taxes collected. One of the things you hear a lot, I heard a lot when I was in office, people would be upset that because their streets were falling apart. And I pay so much in property taxes. Well, property taxes is all of it, and some, as we know, goes to fire and police. It has nothing to do with street paving. This is how we ensure that their property taxes, and rightfully so, are going to maintaining our streets. So again, my original idea was 10% of that, which this year would be $9 million, or almost $10 million, because we collected $99 million in property taxes go to street paving and or CIP.
Right.
Then I saw this and I thought, well, heck, here's some more money, right, that we can grab and lock down an earmark to make sure that that's being invested into our infrastructure as well, instead of going to who knows what. Because when you're a council member that has your eye open for some money, trust me, I'm going to make sure that this is going to go to some project that one of my pet projects. Some are more viable than others, but I think we can all agree that maintaining our streets is an upper echelon issue that we'd all like to make sure that gets addressed, and we're not borrowing money for 20 years, paying interest rates.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other discussion regarding this?
I would like to,
Yes, Ms. Reyes?
yeah, put in, just for the purpose of this, I like where all of this discussion is going, but I'm not fully aware of everything that's happening, so I'm very hesitant to pass a motion right now doing this. So I would like to actually know what the city does right now for infrastructure development. And I don't know who can inform us of that, how they spend money, how do they allot it, how do they divide
You
it?
know, historically, they submit their budget, so you'll see where they're putting in their water lines. We saw some issues there so you'll get the emergency situation where, no, that had to be addressed right now, and they'll move line items, that's important, versus long-term, if you're doing sustained, like you're a businessman, Mr. Vela, you already say, that roof's gonna be replaced in 20 years. I need to budget that, because come 19, I know the following year, that's gonna be a big figure, or that's how businesses generally go. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Vela, you want a hard number to be included in the charter review, so it's budgeted for that
Yeah, well,
purpose.
I want to get away from borrowing money for 20 years to pay for projects that are going to last us 10 years. It makes, and you could say the
Yeah.
same thing about, even about police cars. Right, we borrow money for 20 years to buy police cars that are gonna last 5
They're
years.
dead in 3.
It makes no sense. Now, some of this, it's difficult to be able to get your hands on it. We're certainly not gonna fix it overnight right now. But this is one of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, that I think everybody can get behind. I mean, if you go and you tell your neighbor, you know what, now we're gonna have $10 million for sure every year to pave streets. Where, as opposed to where every year it was like, sometimes there's 0. Sometimes there's 10. I think it was 2014 when we sold that $10 million bond. But again, it's bad business. I mean, we borrowed money for 20 years to pay for streets that are gonna last 10, if we're lucky. So this starts the process of ensuring that we're putting in rules, essentially, that are going to force city council, city government to be fiscally responsible and make sure that money's being put into things that are important to us, important to every citizen.
I would agree with
Yes.
the idea of limiting bonds. I totally agree with that.
I'm sorry,
With bonds,
with getting rid of them, or
limiting them.
I'm sorry.
Limiting the authority of that purchase, right? Not completely taking it away because sometimes those are necessary. However, what I am arguing here is making the decision right now on this 10 or 5%. I want to know more. And respectful of you all's experience, I would like to hear that from an authority in our city that actually allocates that money. I want to know how in the past 10 years, Laredo allocated money for roads. I want to know how they allocated money for the development of our water system, which is going to fail very soon. And so that's why I'm hesitant to allocate this money so specifically for road paving, right? So all I'm saying is I want to know more before I make this decision.
There is a potential motion that Mr. Vela's making. So you're gonna get an opportunity to vote for it or not, unless he wants to modify it with your discussion, saying, do you want to table it and wait for that information, if that's fair to both parties? And if so, Mr. Vela?
I mean, I can answer the question. The way we've been financing street paving is, again, it's selling bonds. There is no revenue source. There's no solid
Yeah, but
revenue
I'm not
source.
just talking about the road paving. I want the economic authority to tell me, hey, this is how we've been developing our city. This is why downtown has been forgotten. This is why we are expanding outside. I want someone to answer the questions you're raising before we set the motion on a specific amount.
Zone, if I may.
Yes, sir, Mr. Vela.
How have we been paying for street paving the past, since you've been here? If at all, by the way.
Well, I mean, you said the bonds and so forth, but it comes down to the CIP, right? I mean, that's the plan, and then everything comes from that, unless there's discretionary funds, right?
What?
For the council members' districts, but
Yes.
it comes from that plan.
Well, but
Everything that Jason
this,
said.
the CIP is unfunded, it's a wish list. That's just, and these are the projects that we're working on so that we can show the people. I mean, Bartlett was on the CIP for 10 years before I got there.
Right.
And it was just every year, hey, this is what's coming. It's like the loop. Like, the loop's coming, and then it's never there.
And I
So-
get it, and some of it hasn't been updated, so, there seems to be less movement than we expect, right? So, it comes down, if you have emergencies, right, there's things that get moved around, like you say. Otherwise, if it's planned, then, you know, it's budgeted, and oftentimes if it's a long-term plan, it's through bonds. And but I agree with you, you know, you should match your bonds to the life of that.
There's also matching funds too from federal government, and you have to be turn and shovel for you to qualify. Example with our infrastructure on transportation. Mr. Valdez, I saw you want to make a comment.
Yes, as far as planning, you know, zones, right, we do have a CIP, and council member knows. Again, every year we talk to our financial advisor, Noé Hinojosa, and they basically come and tell us, it's like your personal loan, hey, how much can I borrow? I need to buy something, right?
That's my
So he'll tell you, you can borrow this amount of money, okay, we can borrow $3 million, where do we want to spend it? What do we need? That's a priority. And so management starts looking and saying, okay, we need this, this, and this, but we also need to fix some of our streets and pave them. And so they might put $1 million of a $3 million bond that they're gonna go get. And that's why, that's how I think they've been doing it for the most part throughout the years. Right or wrong, that's how it's been done. And so there is no plan where this is where all this money goes, right? It's just based on every year, we're paying off bonds that we did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And so now we have availability to borrow so much, right? And so that's where the council has to decide, do we borrow it for X, Y, and Z? And that's where
And Mr. Vela
management
brings
presents
out,
the
yeah.
budget.
Mr. Vela brings out a good point. A lot of people don't see that, oh yeah, we got a credit card or we bought lunch and okay, what are you gonna do at the end of the month when you have to pay it? And are you gonna eat next month? Cause you already spent your money for this month. And he uses it, we've seen it with equipment. Yeah, it's a 20-year note and it's a 3-year life expectancy. We're gonna have to buy 7 more before this bond is done, before we go get the next one. And it goes to you, Ms. Reyes, because that also shows transparency, because you're talking about one thing, the money's already gone, we can't complete that. Well, that doesn't make sense, and you sold a false promise to the taxpayer that signed this bond. You're gonna get these items, and you're gonna get this water system, and it will be good for the next 100 years. Well, that's not true.
I mean, this discussion is making me really nervous. It's, it's like there is no really, why would I go to my financial institution who can approve my loans all the time, who's gonna get profit out of me, right? To advise me on how to spend the money. To me, that sounds crazy.
And that's a great point, which is, again, we can all agree that we can't get rid of bonds, right? But we do want to get some type of control over them. And the only way to be able to do that is to, again, to take some of that money out of the pot. So if you take some of the money, hard money that's being collected from property taxes and dedicate it by charter to street paving, now they don't have as much of a revenue source to be able to borrow so much. So that $3 million now is $2.5 million.
No,
And you're getting control.
I totally agree with
Because you're
what
right.
you're saying.
You're absolutely right. They want so much.
I agree with what you're saying. What I am saying is I need to know more before I mandate money to go in a certain way. Because even right now, we don't, Zone gave us an explanation, you gave us your experience, you did too. But what I'm understanding is that nobody has a comprehensive understanding. It's like we're reacting year by year.
May I?
Yeah, we'll take exception to that, but let's go ahead, Mr. Nguyen.
May I say this, and I think this is maybe where possibly you're going, is that to answer some of your question, Dr. Reyes, it's the city manager's budget. I mean, the professionals put this together. City manager has, from talking with council members and so forth and staff, initiatives and so forth. We're not the federal government. We don't just print money. There is a ratio that we stay within when we borrow money. So that's the constraint and the responsibility we have. But I believe that Mr. Vela is saying that now let's set aside some restrictions on the city manager's budget, and I think that's a proposal that could be entertained.
May I ask a question, Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr.
What is, and I don't know if you can answer this question, what was the most recent excess carryover? How much was that? Do you know that off the top of your head?
not sure.
Okay,
Let me see if I can find out.
yeah, that's kind of important information if we're gonna make, I mean, it could be $12 million and
Sorry.
that's a little much, right?
From the proposed,
They recognize Ms. Benavides. Yes, ma'am.
from the proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget, it says it was 44 million.
44 million?
Yes,
44?
44 million. 44?
44.
Million. I'm looking at it right now. And just for the record too, just to put the numbers into context, the revenues were 56% taxes, and out of that, 65.2 went to public safety, 3.6 went to public works. So I feel like maybe we're getting like very into the weeds of what exactly those numbers are gonna go for, but when you look at the general percentages of the budget and what is coming in and where it's going out to, you can't compare 3.6 to 65.2.
No, and you're exactly, and again, to the point I've been making is, you can't put a number on what firefighters and police officers do. But the more you put in that pot, the more they're going to take. And these unions are becoming stronger and stronger, and I'm not trying to say they don't deserve it, but again, we have to make these difficult decisions as council members, and in order for us to give them the tools to, you know, to have to say no, so to speak, now by charter, we're mandating some of that property tax money, so it's not, over time, it won't be 65%. You know, we can get closer to 60 because we're taking some of that money out and putting it into hard projects that matter to the people, as does public safety, obviously.
One last point on discussion. Ms. Reyes, when I said take exception, just mean it is understood how the process is done. Bonds don't always pass. The voters have spoken before and said, yeah, no, we're not gonna float that for an natatorium, or we're not gonna do that. 200 million, and have voted it down. We're just talking about the process of reaching out. And remember, the voters always put the elected officials here, and the elected officials are responsible to the voters, and we'll have to respond. How are you taking care of our financial stability? How much are you putting at risks here? Are you saving for that rainy day? Mr. Vela is asking for a hard number to be placed. I'm gonna bring us back in. Do you want to modify or make the motion, and then let's go ahead and take a vote at that point?
Yes.
See if it's seconded?
Yes, sir,
and we can
Mr.
make
Chairman,
that
thank you.
discussion.
I'd like to motion that we mandate 5% of all property taxes collected to go to street paving and or CIP projects and that would be city council discretion as to where it goes, street paving and or CIP, which they're kind of one and the same, to be honest. And 5% of all excess funds to go to the same as well. So we're around that $10 million number for now, and it's gonna grow as the city is.
We have a motion by Mr. Roque Vela. Do we have a second of that motion?
Sorry, so you said 5%, Mr. Vela?
5% of all
Property
property tax money revenue coming in, and 5% of
the
excess
carryout?
money.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Black. That means there's going to be a call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There is no opposition, one abstention from Mr. Killam. Okay, with that, we can go to the next item.
Section 6.05, Capital Program Submission to City Council. The city manager shall prepare and submit a 5-year capital program at least 60 days before the end of the fiscal year.
Any discussion regarding this? Not, let's go to item B.
B, contents. The capital program shall include 1, a clear general summary of its contents. 2, a list of all capital improvements which are proposed to be undertaken during the 5 fiscal years next ensuing, with appropriate supporting information as to the necessity for such improvements.
Go to the next one.
3, cost estimates, method of financing, and recommended time schedules for each such improvement. And 4, the estimated annual cost of operating and maintaining the facilities to be constructed or acquired. And then the above information may be revised and extended each year with regards to capital improvements still pending or in process of construction or acquisition.
Any discussion? Let's go ahead and go to C.
Section C, exceptions to capital program. The cost of utility expansion must be made by those requesting expansion, and the city council will not obligate any citizen by adjusting the utility rate to defray cost.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next item.
Section 6.06, council action on budget and capital improvement projects. Section A, notice of hearing. The council shall publish on 5 separate days in a newspaper of general circulation in the city a notice of general summary of the budget and capital improvement projects. The notice must state, 1, the times and place where copies of the budget and capital improvement projects are available for inspection by the public, and 2, the time and place not less than 14 calendar days after such publication for a public hearing on the budget. The council shall hold at least one public hearing during the period of consideration.
Any discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Carranco.
You know, to the point of being more open and clear, in addition to newspaper circulation, perhaps we can add on their social media online to be published on there also. I think that satisfies the question that the doctor here has of being more open to the public. I mean, I read the newspaper, but I'm not quite sure how many other folks my age get the physical newspaper and read it in the morning.
Okay. Any other points? Yes, sir, Mr. Sunya.
Just a comment here. I think it's to meet a legal requirement for publication purposes, not to limit how it's published. I only raise that point because we can add, all this other forms of publicizing the information, which the city should do in good practice. But I believe they have a legal requirement of where it goes, so that everybody agrees a standard of promotion is a newspaper, and at the very least, that's where this has to be. That's what I think. That's why this hasn't been evolved to more stuff, because it's a minimum. I just want to make sure.
Any other discussion regarding that, or?
I would just like to point out.
Dr. Reyes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think we did discuss this before and that point was brought out, but I would like to note that, for example, when we are dealing with oil, extraction from the ground, industry does look at the law and they say newspaper, or we're just gonna do it in the newspaper. We're just gonna set the notice in the newspaper. So if you're leaving it up to best practices, right? We want to ensure that the best practice includes the modernization of communication. And so I'm just gonna throw this out there because we have mentioned this and we continue to kick it down the line. Because I think it was Mr. Valdez who told us we already published it on the website. But for insurance purposes, to make sure that the government does do it, maybe I'm just supporting what you're saying.
I guess this, yes, sir, Mr. Sunya.
So my point here was not that I'm going to try to protect the oil companies. I'm exaggerating. The point here is that we can revise this charter to the finest detail, and if this appears on a ballot, we're going to lose everybody's attention. And I want to just focus on the subjects that we need that we think are paramount. And I think if the city manager isn't doing this, the city council should be holding the city manager accountable for not going beyond just publishing it in a newspaper.
If I may join you, Mr. Sunya, I could say, okay, we're gonna do social media, so we're gonna put it on MySpace, where there is no MySpace. You're the only one that uses it. Or you invent, okay, well, I have this account that I use, AOL America, or what. That's no longer relevant, sir. I suggest Morse code is, nobody does telegraphs anymore.
Right.
So, just as but Dr. Reyes, I agree with you. It doesn't limit, we should be putting out whatever is effective to get out there in whatever means. All means is always better. All participation helps the process. I think we all do better with it. With that being said, is there any further discussion? Do you want to make it as a motion? Do you want to amend your motion, Mr. Carranco? What is your feeling regarding this?
Appreciating Mr. Salmonier's points for minimums and whatnot, I might ask if the staff can just see what other cities may have in charters related to perhaps a more current or updated sort of minimum requirements that other cities may be using
We can do that.
for standard language.
You want to make it as a motion?
I don't think we need to make it as a motion, or do we, as a?
Because we can
I
direct it,
just
you want
wanna
to just
let the
direct it?
commission know that, you know, like these, where you're asking for information, we're gonna bring back everything and we're gonna go over the whole thing again, probably the last 2 meetings.
And we don't have
We
to
can
have it
still
as a
make
motion, so I want to make sure that it gets
We'll
answered
provide
and
that
there is going to
information
be.
for you.
That's satisfactory for me.
Okay, fair enough
I
then.
have a question. It's
Yes,
not
Dr.
related,
Reyes.
it's not
Yes, ma'am.
related to the motion, Mr. Valdez, but I want to know, I know that we keep saying, I even mentioned earlier, I'm struggling with this incrementalism, right? What are we really going to fight for? What sword are we going to die on? But I'm just wondering, when it comes to language change, can there be like a general charter recommendation instead of having to do per section?
What do you mean by?
Or maybe,
by
so
standard?
maybe you can answer that. Can there be like a general recommendation of language change instead of going, section by section when it comes to recommending charter changes?
Well, your recommendation is going to amend this document, that's the thing, so it's.
Right, but
If you
the
talk about-
issue here, right? You
So
understood me?
So I think the question here is, so let us, I'm gonna say, let us assume 5 separate days in a newspaper of general circulation is in 6 sections of this charter. Do we have to have that 6 times, or can we just say, in every section that talks about 5 separate days of notice requirement, we want this change?
I don't know the legalities, but as a citizen, if I'm gonna vote on something, I wanna know what section says 5 separate days and what does that mean? For transparency purposes. So if you wanna do that as a ballot and you're gonna identify each one,
And
that's gonna be tough.
just to be clear, there is a charter that's living, breathing right now, so if we're not clear, that's what prevails, so we have to specifically speak to. Example, look at the word shall.
In May.
Yeah, shall is mandatory, it has to. May is, it's aspirational. So these words have meaning, so each one is very important. So I wouldn't want to break it general, I like that we address it, so we've answered that. This is now mandatory versus this is aspirational.
I think you're saying if it says this in there's different sections, we wanna change that, does it just blanketly change it, all of it? I'm not sure. Legally, I don't think you can do that, but that's just my opinion. I don't know legally if we can.
If I may, I would imagine that.
Yes, sir.
That we would need to, make it understandable for the voters as well as, make it understandable for us, the staff to change. Like, my example would be, there's several places here where it's so many council members voting and others where it's all, council members, including the mayor. So if, like, for instance, in that case, if you say, we want them all to be consistent, then you can say that in general terms, we want all to be consistent, and it means this section, this section, this section, and that would be clear, I believe.
Thank you.
With that, I guess we could move on.
Section B, amendment before adoption. After the public hearing, the council may adopt a budget with or without amendment. In amending the budget, it may add or increase programs and may delete or decrease any programs or amounts except expenditures required by law or for debt service for other estimated cash deficit, provided that no amendment to the budget shall increase the authorized expenditures to an amount greater than the total of established income, nor appropriations be made in the budget to pay expenditures of a previous fiscal year.
Any discussion? Go ahead to number C.
Section C, adoption. The council shall adopt the budget on or before the last day of the month of the fiscal year currently ending. If the city council fails to adopt a budget by this date, the budget of the previous year shall be deemed to be adopted. Adoption of the budget shall constitute appropriations of the amount specified therein as expenditures from the funds indicated and shall constitute a levy of taxes, of property tax therein proposed. In accepting the budget, the council shall complete drafts of the proposed budget ordinance, including an appropriation ordinance and such other ordinances as may be required to finance the budget. The city council by resolution shall adopt the capital improvement projects with or without amendment after the public hearing and on or before last day of the current fiscal year.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next section.
Section 6.07, amendments after adoption. 1, supplemental appropriations. If during the fiscal year, the city manager certifies that there are available for appropriation revenues in excess of those estimated in the budget, the council by ordinance may make supplemental appropriations for the year up to the amount of such excess. The appropriation shall only be made after a public hearing establishes a need for such supplemental appropriations.
How does this impact, Mr. Vela's comment on excess funds?
I would imagine you're gonna limit those excess funds. Right?
Because the way that it reads, right, you already had that power for that.
Yes, so he's talking about how the motion that we approved for taking that 5% of those excess funds, how will this affect that? And those excess funds are going to be 5% less. And
Well, these excess funds are funds that occur during the year, right? So let's say our bridge system's doing outstanding, and so it's in excess of the current budget. This says that the council says, okay, we have this money, we're gonna keep it, it's gonna be excess of the budget, so we're gonna allocate, we're gonna do a bond, or we're gonna spend on buying cars, or whatever it is, right, depending on the amount. My understanding of the prior motion about the excess funds is, at the end of the budget year, what's left over.
Gotcha, yeah.
And so that's what you're gonna say, if it passes and council puts it to the voters and voters approve it. So if that's the new part of the charter, then it would be whatever's left at the end of the year, because there's always something left over, so that would be 5% of that.
Okay.
That's how I understood it.
I'm still okay with that,
Yeah.
if you guys are.
Just trying to make sure that
Yeah.
it's some of the spirit of what you were
Good,
trying.
yes, sir, thank you, that's good, it's a good question.
Okay. Any other discussion? Then I go to the next section.
Number 2, emergency appropriations. To meet a public emergency affecting life, health, property, or the public peace, the council may make emergency appropriations to the extent that there are no available unappropriated revenues. To meet such appropriations, the council may by such emergency ordinance authorize the issuance of emergency notes, which may be renewed from time to time, but the emergency notes and renewals thereof of any such year shall mature and be payable no later than the last day of the fiscal year.
Any discussion? Go to the next section.
Okay, number 3, reduction of appropriations. If at any time during the fiscal year it appears that the revenues available will be insufficient to meet the amounts appropriated, the city manager shall report to the council without delay, indicating the estimated amount of the deficit, any remedial action taken, and recommendations as to any other steps to be taken. The council shall then take such further action as it deems necessary to prevent or minimize any deficit, and for that purpose it may be by ordinance reduce one or more appropriations.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next section.
Number 4, transfer of appropriations. At any time during the fiscal year, the city manager may transfer part or all the unencumbered appropriation balance among programs within a department, office, or agency. Upon written request by the city manager, the council may by ordinance transfer part or all of any unencumbered appropriation balance from one department, office, or agency to another.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next section.
Section 6.08, lapse of appropriations. Every appropriation except an appropriation for a capital expenditure shall lapse at the close of the fiscal year to the extent that it has not been extended or unencumbered. An appropriation for a capital project shall continue in force until the purpose for which it was made has been accomplished or abandoned. The purpose of such appropriation shall be deemed abandoned if 5 years pass without disbursement from one encumbrance of the appropriation.
Chairman, may I?
Yes, sir, Mr. Vela.
So one of the reasons why staff is so influential, aside from just understanding the budget and city government more than a new council member or most council members for that matter, is they understand where a lot of the dead bodies are lying, if you will. There's money that was unencumbered, that's laying around. I'm a new council member, I don't understand the budget, and then this money kind of gets moved around because you don't know where it's at. I didn't realize it was 5 years, and that 5 years tends to, well, often, I would imagine, go into new council members, where this becomes more and more of an issue. So I'd like to move that we change that number from 5 to 3 years. That would be deemed abandoned, that would fit within a term of a council member.
Anybody want to discuss that or add to that?
I would like to second that.
Dr.
I
Reyes,
like
yes.
the idea of 3 years, but not because, not because it correlates with council members' terms, but because 5 years to me seems a lot of time for money to sit without being used that can be used somewhere else.
You have different levels, yeah,
Yeah,
strategic
yeah,
versus
yeah.
tactical versus.
Well, I just wanted to let you know, I agree with the 3 year. I think that's a good measure.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, Mr. Vela, do you want to do it in the form of a motion?
Yes, I move that we move the amount of years that requires this to be abandoned from 5 to 3 years.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Roque Vela. We have a second from Mr. Sune. All right, there's a call for the vote. All in favor say aye. 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 All opposed? None opposed with one abstention, Mr. Killam. Thank you. Let's go ahead and go to the next section.
Section 6.09, Administration of Budget. A, Work Programs and Allocations. At such time as the city manager shall specify each department, office, or agency shall submit work programs for the ensuing fiscal year showing the requested funds categorized by line item for the fiscal year. The city manager shall review and authorize such funds with or without revision as early as possible in the fiscal year. The city manager may revise such funds during the year, and if deemed desirable, shall revise them to accord with any supplemental, emergency, reduced, or transferred appropriations made pursuant to section 6.07.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next item.
Section 6.10, Financial Reports. The manager shall, within 30 days after the close of each quarter of the city's fiscal year, present to the council and make available to the public unaudited financial statements indicating the financial condition of the city. These statements shall include a combined balance sheet of all funds and analysis of change in fund balance, a statement of revenue, actual and estimated, a statement of expenditures and encumbrances compared with the authorizations and analysis of the debt service funds and the general long-term debt group. Accounts shall also be provided quarterly, showing the debt authorized, issued, and unissued, the condition of the sinking funds, and the borrowing capacity of the city.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next section.
Section 6.11, Independent Audit. Within 30 days after the close of the fiscal year, the council shall obtain an independent audit by a certified public accountant firm of all city funds, block grants, and any other accounts associated with the city funds for the preceding fiscal year. As an integral part of the audit, a compliance audit of all major grants shall be provided. Upon completion of the audit, the results thereof shall be reported in writing to the council as soon as reasonably possible following the close of the fiscal year, and said report shall be public record. The results of this audit shall be published within 30 days after completion. The council shall, by request of qualifications, designate such accountant or firm annually or for a period of 2 years, with an option to renew annually for a period not to exceed 4 years. The auditing firm selected shall have no personal interest, either direct or indirect, with the city government, its management, or personnel. The firm must be recognized as independent and void of any circumstances which reasonably people might believe to be likely influence independence. To protect the integrity of the audit, the council is prohibited to engage the same firm to perform any other kind of service whatsoever during the period of their audit engagement.
Any discussions? Let's go ahead and continue.
Section 6.12, borrowing. The council shall have the power, except as prohibited by law, to borrow money by whatsoever method it may deem to be in the public interest. The total overall outstanding debt shall be limited to 10% of the total assessed valuation of the city.
Mr. Vela, yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. This is where I'd like to address the discretionary funds. And basically, I'd like to motion to not allow city manager and/or city council to direct city manager to sell bonds for discretionary purposes for over $1 million a year as a council as a whole. So basically, we're limited to $1 million every year. That doesn't mean they have to. That's just the cap that they're going to sell, and then that gets divvied up within the council.
Can you,
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna ask,
And I'll recognize you, Mr. Black.
Mr. Vela, you talk a little bit more.
Yes. So right now, every year, for instance, when I was in council for 4 years. We sold bonds for discretionary money once for $100,000 each. Now, and especially when you have a lot of turnover at the city manager office, a lot of times a new city manager will buy favor, if you will. And for instance, this past year, I believe it was $700,000 each council member got. Sometimes it's 500, sometimes that all varies every year. And in my case, when I was there, it was only one time out of 4 years that we sold bonds. So this caps it, limits them to only be able to sell bonds for discretionary purposes for not to exceed $1 million per city council as a whole. So essentially, what would that be? 200,000? No.
So you're capping discretionary funds.
Per year, per fiscal year.
Per fiscal year.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Black, you had a question
Bye.
or a discussion. Yes, sir.
I just had a what?
Bio.
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
Please excuse me.
you're
Where am
excused.
I?
It's an uncommon last name. I just had a question of clarification. What can discretionary funds be spent on?
So there's a great question. They're supposed to, by law, only be spent for brick and mortar projects. Something you can put your hands on. Anything that's sold at the CO, that's sold against property tax, that's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Towards the end of my tenure, not because I was okay with it, that's just the way that thought process kind of went away. Now it's pretty much anything, to be honest with you, even though we shouldn't be doing it. But it's supposed to be brick and mortar projects.
I see.
And we can, again, you want to add that on there too, I'm all for it. We're making sure that it's for brick and mortar projects.
Previously, you had mentioned the possibility that removing discretionary funds would compel them to take more of a role in the budget process as a whole.
Remember, all this goes to city council. Like, they have the final say to say yes or no, we're gonna put this on the ballot. Which is why I'm, kind of want to meet halfway and just say, 125 each every year, and hopefully that would be kind of meeting halfway, if we will, as opposed to just getting rid of it totally.
In actual practice, what are discretionary funds spent on other than brick and mortar projects? Are there examples that could? Studies.
Designs. I've seen a council member spend $500,000 in 5 minutes on studies.
Commissioning a study by, whatever, for,
Could be a study for, let's have a study that if we want to have a park here, or do we want to have a
what would the
roundabout
impact
here?
of that be or something?
Yeah,
Interesting.
it was a jaw dropping.
Okay.
Just so you know, we've been trying to keep it to brick and mortar.
No, I'm sure you have, but
we
at the
tried
end of the
to
day,
avoid, murals and such.
I'm not saying this is staff. This is just, again, we go with city council members more times than not. They don't, and it's not because they're not intelligent. They just, the city government is new to everybody unless it's something that you went to school for. So they don't understand that they can't do that. And then a lot of times they come in and they don't believe staff, or they just get confrontational and say, why are you telling me no? I'm a city council member. So, and at the end of the day, you guys work for them, right? So, all right, you want to spend it on that, we're spending it on that. And no, we shouldn't. But it happens, and it happened my last 2 years, it got worse and worse and worse, and that's been 8 years since then, so I can only imagine how bad it is now. When I first got here, it was Carlos Verian. He was very good at saying no.
It was lower when I was there. We would only do, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but we used to get half of a quarter of what the bridge revenues made that year. And so that was literally $25,000 for my district, and we made miracles happen. And some years there was zero, because we didn't have enough to give anybody anything. All of this started, they started doing bonds back,
Remember?
under one of the city managers.
Yeah. And
I left.
you had to be turning shovels, so they were also trying to get some other federal ones that they were trying to.
And the restriction was brick and mortar because that's what the revenues from the bridge system could only be used on. And so that's why we did it that way. Then they started borrowing money, and whatever the bond covenants allow you to use it for, design, purchase of land, and the actual physical construction of basketball courts or whatever it is, right? Or a building or whatever you want to do, that's what's allowed, and that's the allowed use. And so I know currently there was an issue with one of the council members wanted to use some money for something. It was to, I think, purchase, but the way it was, the bonds were held, they couldn't, so they couldn't do it. And they were told they couldn't. And so we have to abide by whatever the bond that was sold is. And so there are some, I mean, there's regulation in this because we're audited. As you saw, the independent auditors come in and they question all these things. And so we have our internal auditor also that looks at these things. Anyways, my 2 cents are.
Thank you. Is it a good idea to borrow money for discretionary spending at all? I mean, when I think of my home budget, I don't want to borrow money unless it's something I need or it's something essential.
It's not. And the number, I think, I haven't studied a municipal budget outside of Laredo's for a while. But when I used to do this, and with other cities in Texas, no one comes close to matching this kind of money in terms of discretionary funds. This is just way out of kilter.
I remember some councilmen used to use it to fix, because you were from District 1, you're entitled to money because of federal ones. Well, I can't build, so we're to put our discretionary together, but it has morphed into something else, kind of a credit card.
So I understand Mr. Vela's concern, though. I mean, if we cut back on it too much, the city council might not even vote to put it on the. That's why I was saying before, we should vote them all in big graves.
I want to go back to the idea of a participatory budgeting process, because I feel like if we're talking about checks and balances and we're talking about, there's a concern of we don't want to limit the fund too much, I get that, but then there's the real question of where is that money going to? And are these investments that districts are getting to benefit from 3, 5, 10 years down the line? And the answer is no, then there's no justification for the amount of money that city council members are being given.
The reality is there is not. And to Christie's point, 9 times out of 10, it's speed humps. And then it's other ridiculous stuff. I can't recall one relevant project, and I'm sure there is. And for instance, I use my discretionary money for the pull-up outlet. They're all discretionary. All the other projects, I use other revenue sources, but that's what I use my discretionary money. Then I left a bunch of discretionary money left over. But others, like I mean, I'd sit there sometimes and I'd hear a motion, and I can't control my face. It's just the way I am. And I'd make some faces, and it was a tad bit unprofessional, I'm not gonna lie. But I just couldn't understand what they were thinking at times. And that's why I was so psyched about getting on this commission, because we have an opportunity to be able to handcuff them, and not completely, but limits the fiscal responsibility. I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose. More times than not, they just don't understand. They don't know what they can and cannot do, and they've never had. I mean, imagine somebody that has never managed a real budget, and all of a sudden you're handing them over a $9 million budget, or a $900 million budget, $1 billion. Like, that's a lot to grasp. And it's important for us to be able to put some of those stopgaps so that they're not getting out of hand. And it's gotten out of hand. And I think I'd love to be able to go to zero. I would. And I think the people will absolutely vote it, because it comes up every single election year. But how do we get it to the ballot?
Well, I think, you know, I don't think we're in a position to do this now. I think it would definitely take a pilot program to try it out. But if we wanted to explore the idea of a participatory budget that had more guardrails, like projects need to cost between X and X amount of dollars, need to be in progress in the community for 5 years, the way to get a participatory budget embedded in a locality would be by a charter revision in the ballot. But that, of course, would come after a pilot program, right? Like, I don't think we can say, let's just get rid of discretionary funds and let's just run with participatory budgeting without having any idea of what it could look like. But to actually be able to pilot it and test it would be an idea for council leading into another charter revision commission.
What do you think would be a reasonable amount of discretionary funds based on your experience?
Honestly, zero.
Okay.
They don't need it. They just, it makes them, we're giving them a reason not to want to understand our budget.
Yeah.
But, I mean, do we get this on the ballot if we say zero? And I could understand what you're saying too, like, let's ease into it. 4 years goes real fast. A lot of money gets spent in 4 years as well, and we have to start somewhere. And I know the people are ready to do something about this discretionary money free for all, if you will. And I know if we get on the ballot, they're going to vote for it. And there might be people that go to vote just to vote for this.
Right.
If I may,
Yes,
I agree
Dr. Reyes.
with everything that has been said. So I'm wondering if we can do zero discretionary fund that comes from bonds. Because I am totally against this idea of $1 million going
Credit
into
cards.
debt every year. Yeah. So zero based on bonds, and then we don't close completely the door on discretionary funds because it's after a pork barrel. I don't know.
I'll share one thing, and Mr. Vela can probably further elaborate. He left a very loaded discretionary fund. So I'm the next guy walk in. I've got a great gift card with all these games on it. Woo! So I'm gonna use it. Or the opposite. You could have gone crazy, and for whatever reason you're not in office. Now I walk in and there's the checkbook's bouncing.
That happens too.
And they're going, why can't he get that done? So, yes, sir, Mr. Valdez.
I just want to clarify that that is a true statement. We, again, when I was on council, we have 25,000, zero some years. 100 is the most we had, and we were thrilled. Then I left, and that's when all this changed, right?
Yep.
So I defeated the incumbent, and he never spent his money. And when I walked in, he had 750,000. Can you imagine? That was wow. I mean, I never had that over 6 years. So yeah, it's a lot of money.
With that, do you want to make a motion, or is there any other discussion? And if not, Mr. Vela, would you like to make a motion?
I motion to limit the sale of bonds for discretionary purposes to $1 million a year.
For fiscal
For the
year?
entire council, for fiscal year.
We have a motion by Mr. Vela. We have a second by Mr. Andrew Carranco. That means there's a call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I'm gonna oppose it.
One
I
opposition,
want a
Doc-
zero.
Dr. Reyes, and Mr. Killam is an abstention, so. With that, the motion passes. We're ready to go to the next item.
Section 6.13 bonds. A, general obligation bonds. The city shall have the power to borrow money on the credit of the city and to issue general obligation bonds, for the acquisition of property for permanent public improvements or for any other public purpose not now or hereafter prohibited by the Constitution and law of the state of Texas, except for the refunding of bonds, previously issued. Proposition to borrow money and to issue such bonds shall first be approved by a majority of the voters at an election called for the purpose of authorizing the issuance of such indebtedness. The ordinance calling such election and the manner of conducting the election shall conform in all respects to the general laws of the state of Texas. A proposed issuance of a bond for any capital improvement projects valued at over 10% of the comprehensive budget, excluding enterprise funds, shall be approved by voters through ballot referendum.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Reyes.
So now you have this, the city council can borrow money, against the 15% valuation of the city, right? And then you have this idea of other bonds being able to be borrowed. The valuation is the same, but the debt increases. Am I wrong about this assumption? Am I wrong?
Are you
So
saying?
so you have these several tentacles that can borrow money. Does that change the valuation for the next borrower? Or is it all based on the same valuation?
No,
Are you talking about interest rates and the amount of in debt? Because
No,
that change your credit
let's
rating
say this-
and cost you more
I think you're
to.
talking about the debt ratio, right? So we know.
There's a
Yeah.
total, there's a cap on the amount of indebtedness, I think, that the city can be in.
Yeah,
Is a cap on the debt?
There's a
Thank you.
cap on the
That's what I, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
it's the ratio, yeah.
And if I'm reading this correctly, what they're talking about the general fund, because this is excluding enterprise funds. So basically, you cannot issue a bond, and the general fund is what right now, 210 million, I'm guessing, from what, no, it's probably more than that, but like $240 million. So you can't sell a bond for more than $25 million of the general, right?
Thank you.
That's what this is saying?
It's the ratio, yeah.
So yeah, honestly, that sounds a little high, but,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
And we're below that.
Collectively, you're selling for more than that, just one bond that you can't sell for more than 25. That's the cap.
But our ratio is actually good. That's why we have a high bond
Credit
rating.
rating.
Yeah, credit rating.
Any further discussion, or let's go ahead and go to that next section?
It shall be the duty of the council to levy an annual tax efficient to pay the interest on and provide the necessary sinking fund required by law on all outstanding general obligation bonds of the city. The interest and sinking fund shall be deposited in a separate account and shall not be diverted to or used for any other purpose than to pay the interest and principal on such bonds or for investment in such securities as may be provided by law. The sinking fund maintained for the redemption of any debt may be invested in an interest-bearing bonds of the United States government and the state of Texas or in any other securities not prohibited by the laws of the state of Texas. These funds may not be pledged as security or collateral for borrowing by the city.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next section.
Section B, revenue bonds. The city shall have the power to borrow money for the purpose of constructing, purchasing, improvement, extending, or repairing of public utilities, recreational facilities, or facilities for any other self-liquidating municipal function not now or hereinafter prohibited by any general law of the state, and to issue revenue bonds to evidence and the obligation created thereby. Such bonds shall be charged upon and payable solely from the properties or interest therein acquired and to income therefrom, and shall never be a debt of the city. The council shall have authority to provide for the terms and form of the purchase agreement, contract, mortgage, bond, or document desired or necessary for the issuance of revenue bonds and the acquisition and operation of any such property or interest.
Any discussion? Let's go to the next section. C.
Section C, certificates of obligation. The city council is hereby authorized to issue certificates of obligation in accordance with the laws of the state of Texas.
Let's go to the next section.
Section D, sale of bonds. Before bonds are sold, they shall be submitted to and approved by the Attorney General of Texas in the manner and with the effect provided by the laws of the state of Texas.
No questions, discussion? Next section.
E, bonds incontestable. All bonds of the city having been issued and sold and having been delivered to the purchaser thereof shall thereafter be incontestable, and all bonds issued to refund in exchange for outstanding bonds previously issued shall, and after said exchange, be incontestable.
No discussion. Next section.
Section 6.14, City Depository. The city shall designate a primary bank to provide depository and specified banking services. The designation of such bank shall be made through a depository contract. A request for proposal for such contract shall clearly state the services that the city is requesting, and the award of the contract shall be based on the lowest proposed cost for those services or lowest compensating balance, or combination of both, as is determined to be in the best interest of the city. The depository contract shall not exceed a period of 5 years.
Any discussion?
The city manager shall deposit all public funds in excess of the amount provided as the compensating balance on deposit. If a compensating balance is a term of the depository contract, funds in excess of that amount shall be available for investments authorized under the investment law of the state of Texas.
Any discussion? Keep going.
The designation of a primary depository bank shall not restrict the city from entering into depository contracts with other financial institutions for the purposes of investing and/or receiving services not provided by the depository banks. The city manager shall comply with the terms of the depository agreement, and such official shall not be liable for the loss of any money of said city so deposited by reason or any failure of or suspension of such bank.
Any discussion? No discussion. Mr. Valdez, are we okay?
Yes, sir. I'd ask to entertain a motion unless you have questions or comments.
The agenda said we were gonna cover until Article 7, taxation, which is one additional page. It's not included in this document.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I was pointing out over there.
Yeah, my bad.
Okay,
We didn't prepare that.
How quickly could it be printed?
I'm sorry?
Could it be printed right now and brought to us, or
It's
no?
one page.
Or do you have any more of these?
I have it online, I'm sorry.
I have mine.
We can pick up there.
I have mine.
I have mine. We all have.
Well, given
I leave it open. I like that we have the agenda. We're all here present.
And we're
It
in
feels
sync.
very
We're
doable.
moving forward, and it's,
Can
Would
we
it be-
share?
We can
just
share.
copy this.
Ms. Navarro's done a great job reading, phenomenal.
Does everybody have a copy of this at your tables?
I'll look over your shoulder. Thank you. Yeah, no, we're good right here,
You
so.
use that one, Henry.
No, I have one.
Oh, you
my
have
own. Yeah.
Oh, everybody's got one.
Doctor, how about you?
It's in
You
my
good?
pocket right here.
Excellent. Mr. Vela, how about you, Mr. Caraco? Are you guys good?
No, I brought mine.
Excellent, excellent. Let's go ahead then and go to the next item.
Sorry about that.
No, not at all. Let's go to section, is it 8? I'm sorry.
7, taxation.
7, taxation.
Article 7.
But it was 8 on the agenda. That's all I said.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
No, it's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
Guys, I was making so much mistakes. I still need to apologize to my good friend Jack, but let's go ahead and go to that section.
Article 7, taxation, section 7.01, Department of Taxation. There shall be a Department of Taxation, the head of which shall be the city tax assessor and collector, who shall be appointed by the city manager and who shall either be solely responsible or shall have the authority to contract out with another entity for the assessment and collection of the taxes levied by the city of Laredo.
Any discussion? Next section.
I have a,
Oh, yes, sir.
Maria, is there a question here about whether or not this should be an elected position for you, or no?
Well, it has worked so far, I think, okay for the Texas government, but I don't have any, I like the idea of someone knowledgeable on taxes as
Yeah.
But thank you, Jack. How about you? Do you have?
Oh,
concerns?
I'm fine. You know, a lot of these positions require,
Knowledge.
some advanced knowledge, and
Yeah.
the people in general are not always in a position to judge who might that's person B, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm okay with this.
If there's no other discussion, let's go to the next section.
Section 7.02, powers of taxation. The city shall have the power to levy, assess, and collect taxes in the amount and of a very character and type not prohibited by the Constitution and the laws of the state of Texas for any municipal purposes. The power and authority thus conferred upon the city council shall not be restricted or limited by any other provision of this charter.
Any discussion? Let's keep going.
Section 7.03, tax payments. All taxes due to the city of Laredo shall be payable at the office of the city tax assessor and collector or at one or more other authorized locations throughout the city and may be paid anytime after assessments have been made final by the council. Taxes shall become due on October 1st of the year of levy and shall be paid by the following January 31st. Taxes for the current year not paid by April 30th of the year following the year of levy, and all taxes for each year thereafter not paid by the 31st following the year of levy shall be subjected to penalty in accordance with the state law. There shall be no extension of time for payment of taxes, nor remission, discount, or compromise of any tax, penalty, and interest legally due to the city. The city council, however, may provide a discount for early payment.
Any discussion? Let's keep going, Ms. Navarro.
Section 7.04, tax liens and liability. All property, real, personal, and mixed situated in the city of Laredo in the first day of January of each year shall be charged with a lien in favor of the city for the taxes due thereon. All issues of liability, priority of liens, foreclosure, and collections of same shall be in accordance with the Texas tax code.
No discussion? Let's keep going.
Section 7.05, no separate assessments. The city tax assessor and collector shall not be required to make separate assessments of joint or conflicting interest in any real estate.
No discussion? We'll keep going.
So Section 7.06, arrears of taxes, offset to debt against the city. No money shall be paid by the city upon any claim, debt, demand, or account whatsoever to any person, firm, or corporation who is in the arrears of the city of Laredo for taxes, and the city shall be entitled to counterclaim and offset against any such debt, claim, demand, or account in the amount of taxes so in arrears, and no assignment or transfer of such debt, claim, demands, or account after the said taxes are due shall affect the right of the city to offset the said taxes against the same.
Any discussion? With that, we've covered the last item here on our agenda. Is there any other business we have not discussed?
I just have a question. Are we gonna
Yes.
come back to everything, at the end of this?
Yes, we're planning on the last two meetings, doing everything again.
Okay.
And anything that you all have concerns with, we'll open it up. We'll probably give you a presentation of where we're at with the items you've already voted on. And then I know there's some issues that you've asked us to look into. We'll bring that back to you as we go. We're just trying to get through it once, and then we're gonna revisit everything again. If that's what is good with the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Valdez. Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Serenier?
that's good. However, what I'd like to see is a schedule of our meetings, because I have a very aggressive travel schedule, and I don't mind moving around my travel once, but already it's been twice.
Yeah.
And and that's because I'm not able to plan.
We'll send you one probably by tomorrow of the meetings that we're planning on having.
Well,
The-
Do we know
That's
when our
not-
next,
but
do you
that's
want the
not-
next meeting, right?
No,
That
I'm saying,
needs to
but
look-
that's not
Enough.
telling us when we're gonna meet.
The third Tuesday of
Is-
every month.
Is that been decided?
That's the availability of council chambers.
See,
Unless you all want to do something different, but then we
yeah,
can't do it
I
here.
don't know that the meeting venue is that important to me, to be honest with you.
Okay.
More is the practicality of our schedules, especially if we need to meet more often, in order to finish. I mean, if we're not gonna finish because the room's not available, then put us in another room. That's not a challenge for me being in another room. And I only say this, obviously, you're trying to coordinate so many schedules, and that's going to be difficult. But
And to preserve the audiovisual, that's another
But I
element.
just, we need a solution, and if we had maybe been told this back then, that this is when we're meeting or something to that effect, I don't know that it was so clear to me, to be honest with you.
No, it wasn't. We were trying to accommodate everybody here. And so we have over 30-something commissions and committees and boards. And so throughout the city, there's only certain locales where we can meet
Yeah.
and be able to video record.
Yeah.
And so that's why we said, oh, what day really is available, and that was the only day for here. Now, if that doesn't work for the commission,
Okay with that?
then we can discuss that during the week. I know it's not an agenda item, but we can discuss that and we can look at other opportunities, but I'd have to check
So what
to
day do
see
we-
if the other locations are
Thursday of the
available.
month, the evening.
Third Thursday of the month?
Or Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday.
This was because of President's Day.
I'm
and
so sorry, I'm
council
glad you caught it,
elections.
Ms. Betty, that's
So
exactly.
it's President's Day, and then council met the next day when we should have met, and then so it had to move. And this was the only available day during this week. But we can look at the library and see if what days they have available, and I can send you all that, and then you all let me know where you wanna meet.
So the next Tuesday would be March 19th, is that correct? March 19th.
Is everybody seem good with that, or?
No, I'm in, 'cause I have a travel schedule that's already fixed for the next 8 months, and so I'm in Mexico. And I'm not trying to change it, I'm just,
We could meet in
I'm gonna
Mexico.
go
Fine.
to.
We'll have to
We
check
could make it
the
a
funds
Zoom when we're
available.
good.
No, I wouldn't
Transfer
be here.
some excess funds.
April.
We have for Chick-fil-A, I don't know if we have for trips.
Where's the discretionary funds when we need them?
Days are you available, Miss?
Just to be clear, then, it's the 19th, then the following meeting would be the 16th?
Right, that would be the third Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And then the following meeting would be the 21st?
Yes, sir.
By when do we have to be finished?
No, the 20.
I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I wanna say before June.
Before June? So
We're gonna be reviewing everything by May again, that's for sure.
Twice a month at least.
So we might have to do an extra special meeting or something during the calendar.
Very good. Okay. The only, and again, I'm not asking for a special treatment, but the March 19th date is the only one that I have a conflict with of all the dates that we reviewed.
And just so you know, I think May is May the 28th. Oh, no, the 21st, I'm sorry.
Can I
You
ask
were right.
us?
You were right.
Can I ask the committee if they would consider March 26th, the following Tuesday?
I'm available, I'll share that. Sure. And how's everyone else?
I'll be out of town on the 19th also, so the 26th is far more appropriate for me.
Okay. Dr. Reyes, how about you? Mr. Vela, how about you? How are you looking
All
for?
I need is 2 days heads up and I'm.
There we go.
Does that work? Is it available?
We have to check, I don't have the calendar, we have a scan.
But could we at least propose that as
We're
a,
proposing that, and then if another room's available,
We'll see where we
travel.
can meet if on the 26th.
We can meet at Playmore.
you know what, if
I'm
Paymo,
halfway joking.
if Paymo will host us, we'll go to Paymo.
I mean, we got a conference room, can make it work.
they have a
No,
nice.
but we need to have, I know, everything taped.
They can
I
set up
know
cameras.
that conference room across at the entrance,
We'll look, let us look and we'll let you know by tomorrow what's available. And
Yes,
if we
the
can meet on the
bank also has a
26th, we'll definitely try.
I appreciate your consideration.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But we're strongly leaning towards the 26th, because again, to all the commissioners, thank you. Everyone's very active. I think that really reflects in some of these thoughts and discussions, and I want to thank each one of you. This is a sacrifice each one of you are making. Thank you so very much.
Can I?
Yes, yes.
Can I just say one
Yes,
thing?
Mr. Vela, of course, I'm sorry.
A couple of questions and comments. And number one, I completely agree with your comments. It was, I thought we did some really good things for possibly for moving the city forward, and we're working well together. So I appreciate you, you guys accepting me. I know this is our second meeting. But, so a question, this agenda is a little restrictive. There's no communications in here where we can freely go back and forth with the staff. And also, as you guys know, I'm here representing a council member that was unjustly left out of office for 15 months. and I missed the first meeting that addressed the terms. I know we're gonna revisit it later on. My concern is, if we wait till then the wording that may come up, we may not be comfortable with. I'm assuming everybody's on the same page with addressing that situation, which I think we are. I'd like to have something on the agenda where we can, that's a little bit more broad, maybe, all the items that we're going to discuss, and also any matters here, though, that addresses the city charter as a generality, so that we can go back and forth with things that were already discussed, that maybe we want to, we go back and we think about something, man, I should have addressed this, or things of that nature. Just open it up a little bit more.
I like that.
So I'd like to make a
Yes, sir.
recommendation, or
Yes, sir.
maybe put this as a motion. So in addition to covering, I move that in addition to covering the items that staff sets before us to discuss at that particular meeting, that an item be left open at the end for comment on other items or issues that may not have been addressed at that particular meeting. But may I add with a caveat that the person looking to add something to it, announce it ahead of time. In other words, let city staff know, this is what I'd like to discuss in addition to it.
Yeah, even better.
Yeah, that way it's published, and since it's published, we know what was gonna be
Yeah,
discussed.
that's even.
And we could get public comments too. People can join us. Mr. Valdez, you had a comment. Yes, sir.
I'll talk to Mr. Zone, our legal attorney here, and maybe we can, we're reviewing the whole thing, but we just take up where we left off. And so it's always open, if that's allowed.
Yeah, so.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you're
leave it open?
essentially, you're going to set the agenda like you did now with the next chapters, and still leaving the front end open so we can go back and address that as well.
Or we
But
just
it
kind
has
of leave
already
it
been discussed.
open-ended, all of it, and we just pick up where we left
I
off.
like that even.
Either way.
I'd like to just be able to discuss the
Whatever
charter,
legally we can do.
anything in the charter. It's all fair game.
Yeah. Anything legally that we can do, we'll just check. The part about the communications, I know in the past, the law had changed where you just can't have, open session. Cause people need to know what you're gonna speak,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And so we just wanna make sure that we're following the law, and
If
we'll
we
leave it
put
as open as we
as
can.
new business, then you can
Yeah,
make
I
an
don't think you
address.
can do
On
the
the
new
next
business
one,
thing
we will
anymore.
address this. So we're in violation of the open.
So I'm not too
Meetings
sure how
Act.
that,
Yes, sir.
is that so
Mr. Sargent.
radically different from the motion that I made?
No,
No.
no.
No, not really. I
So
mean, you
then
can make a
can-
motion, it's not on the agenda to discuss that, but we can do that on our own. That's not a
I
problem.
see what you're saying.
So, we can just do it on our own, and you all tell
And
us.
if there's something
send
we
out-
want on the agenda,
Yeah.
we contact.
Yeah, anything that's not in the charter that you might wanna discuss, or put in a section that's not a section, that's totally new, just let us know, we'll open that up and we'll word it however y'all want, and
Kind
before
of,
the agenda goes out.
kind of akin to council members adding on their,
Yeah, something like that.
Exactly, and you could even draft it as, okay, a request from this
that's fine.
commissioner.
We'll figure it out to accommodate everybody.
Got it.
We have it open for everything,
That works for me.
sounds
if
great.
that's okay.
Sounds good.
Move to
Thank you.
adjourn?
With that, I'll open it up for any motions. Yes, sir, Mr. Vela made a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I see a hand over there, Mr. Carranco, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None opposed with Mr. Killam in abstention. For the record, it is 8:55 and we are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
7.